Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brian Hanley. Welcome back to Steelers Almighty. This is a series that we're starting. It's a new one called My Position by Position. So, what it is we're basically taking a deep dive at the Steelers roster and where we can make changes, where we need to make changes, where we're going to make changes. We're going to look into all of that, starting with the roster as far as guys that are currently under contract. Do we need to bring them back? Guys that are not under contract, do we need to let those guys go or bring them back? Look at any free agents that we need to bring in, and also take a look at the draft. Where can the Steelers upgrade their roster in the draft to make it a better team for 2025? Today, we're starting with the defensive line. For me, since the Steelers are always in the nickels, 58% of the time, the Steelers were in the nickel, which is outrageous. So I always count our outside linebackers as our defensive line because they are rushing 95% of the time. So we count the TJ Watts and the Alex Highsmith in the defensive line as we break this down. As when I do anything on the Steelers Almighty channel, I always count the outside linebackers as defensive linemen because of what they do on a game-to-game basis. Don't do the zone dropping or any of that stuff very often, if at all. Now, on the season, I graded the defensive line overall as a B. When you got TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, Herbig, Cam Hayward, those guys that caused havoc this year for the Steelers, they did a really good job. Now, did they wear down at the end of the year? Yeah, I would say that they did. Part of that was schematics, what we were doing on a game to game basis, or better yet, a down to down basis, wasn't always the best fit for what we were trying to do. TJ Watt was banged up at the end of the year. If you just watched, you could tell he was not the same guy the last 4 or 5 games of the season. But overall, the defensive line played well. They caused havoc. When you have two all pros on your D line, I mean, you're doing something right. Cam Hayward was absolutely phenomenal at the age 35 years old, still dominating, pushing guys around, causing havoc. The Steelers have a very good defensive line, but can they get better? We're going to take a look at it. So the first thing that we're going to tackle is, the Steelers that were on the team, but they're out of contract. So these are guys that are currently free agents right now for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And for the Steelers, there's only two, Isaiah Loudermilk and Jeremiah Moon. Those guys are currently, as far as D linemen, are no longer under contract. Now, look, Loudermilk was a rotational piece. He's not somebody that I think the Steelers should bring back. It's not that he can't add depth, which I think that he can, but how effective was he actually when he was in the game? I think the Steelers can do better. I think they can find another depth piece to add a little bit more value, even if it's in the draft. Be able to find that to give them more of what they're looking for. A bigger, more athletic body, somebody that can push some people around. Look, the Steelers got to get better against the run. The D line's got to be a big part of that. And I think Loudermilk is just somebody that if you did bring him back, it's on a 1-year minimum, but I don't think the Steelers should waste their time in bringing Loudermilk back. As far as Jeremiah Moon, same principle. I mean, yes, he was a rotational piece, but again, when he was out there, he wasn't causing havoc. It was so much that the Steelers went out and signed Preston Smith because Jeremiah Moon wasn't getting the job done when called into action. Now, that's not necessarily his fault. You don't need him playing a high number of snaps, but you did need somebody out there that could be effective when he was out there. So whatever you think about Preston Smith, he was better than what Jeremiah Moon was, even at a little bit of an advanced age. I don't think Jeremiah Moon is that great of a fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I would not suspect that the Steelers would bring him back, and I don't think that they should. They can find that depth piece other places. Now, as far as Steelers that are currently under contract, I mean, let's start obviously with TJ Watt. Again, I know he's classified as an outside linebacker, but for what I break down as far as Steelers defensive line and how much they just truly rush, you count those guys as defensive linemen, in my opinion. So TJ Watt, look, he's got to get extended. The Steelers aren't trading TJ Watt. There's a lot of talk out there about how he could possibly be moved and it would do the Steelers, justice, and it would benefit them if they did trade him. And to be quite honest, it would. I mean, you could get a haul for TJ Watt if you decided to trade him. But the Steelers aren't going to do that. And if you know me and you've been following this channel for a while, you know that I only deal with what the Steelers are going to do. They're not going to trade TJ Watt. They want him to be a one helmet guy, so he's not going anywhere. So last year of his deal, it's got to get restructured. It's going to give you some calories or salary cap space relief. Also give him a nice big bag to make him happy, to not have to go into the last year of his contract. I suspect that gets done fairly soon, but you restructure TJ, give him an extension. Obviously, you're going to keep him around because when healthy, he's one of the best defensive players in the world. Next up, Cam Hayward. Look, Cam's not going anywhere. I thought last offseason would have been the offseason. If Cam Hayward was going somewhere, he would have gone. He didn't. The Steelers re-upped him. Now, his salary cap hit is a lot. So the Steelers got to figure something out with that. Having said all of that, you're not getting rid of Cam Hayward. Same thing as with TJ Watt. Cam Hayward is a one helmet guy. He's going to end up retiring a Steeler, whether you like that or not. I don't know why this one would even be controversial. You might be able to say somebody that's 28, 29, maybe they're slowing down. Okay, you get rid of them. Cam's 35, and he just was a first-team All-Pro. So while, yes, Father Time is absolutely undefeated, with 2 years left, maybe only one for Cam to play. Maybe you try to stretch that number out a little bit because the salary cap hit is a lot. But having said all of that, Cam Hayward is going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler and should be a Pittsburgh Steeler next year. So next up, this one is tricky. It's Alex Highsmith. Now, look, Alex Highsmith is ultra productive. He's got a crazy motor, really, really good against the run. But a lot of people say, well, hold on now. We got Nick Herbig. We have the luxury of being able to get rid of Alex Highsmith because Alex Highsmith makes a lot of money. But here's the thing. You can't trade Alex Highsmith before the draft, people. I've taken a deep dive into this. And if you do trade him, it's for next year, 2026. Here's the reason why. So his cap hit, if you trade him before June 1st of 2025, is $16.8 million. Well, you're not going to trade him and take that kind of a salary cap hit to trade him before June 1st. And we know that nobody's going to be doing business because the draft is in April. Nobody's doing business in between that time and June 1st. So the chances of being able to trade him during that time number one, isn't going to happen. And for the Steelers, it doesn't make sense. You're not taking that kind of cap hit. Now, if you trade him after June 1st of 2025, the Steelers save $13 million against the cap, which you're thinking, okay, we can live with that. But you're not going to get the kind of draft capital for 2025. That draft capital is obviously going to be for 2026 because the draft will have already happened for this year if you cut him or trade him after June 1st. So, Alex Highsmith, in all intents and purposes, is going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler this year. Now, anything can happen. I mean, for hell, we just saw Luka Doncic get traded. So anything can happen in the National Football League as well. But I would suspect that Alex Highsmith has another year with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the Steelers got to start being creative because Nick Herbig needs to get on the field a little bit more. I think they got to do a lot of putting all three of those guys on the field at the same time. I know Herbig, they did it early. Herbig got hurt, and then Highsmith got hurt, and then Watt. So it just didn't come to fruition. Well, it's got to start coming to fruition. We got to start mixing things up, moving guys around, doing different things. But Highsmith will absolutely be on the Steelers this coming season because, again, the salary cap hit. You don't trade a guy like Alex Highsmith to get draft capital in 2026. That wouldn't make any sense. Next up, we got Preston Smith. Now, Preston Smith, on the other hand, he's not going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler next year, at least not in the form that he is right now. He's a $13 million cap hit. Steelers can cut him and save $13 million. There's zero dead money. 31 years old. I'm sorry, Preston Smith, he's not going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. Now, I say that. He's not going to be under this contract. He's getting cut by the Steelers, okay? That opens up so much more cap room for them to spend in other places. So maybe they do end up bringing him back. Maybe that's something that they could do on a veteran minimum. I don't know. But as far as his current contract, there is no way that the Pittsburgh Steelers bring Preston Smith back at $13 million. That's not happening. Next up, we got Larry Ogunjobi. Look, I like Larry O. He's a pro's pro, but for the amount of money that he makes and the production, Larry O is not going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. They can save $7 million by getting rid of him, and that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers should absolutely do. Again, need to get younger on the defensive line, and if you're going to get younger, save some money while you're doing it. Absolutely. This is where the draft comes in to replace what Larry O brings to the table. You get younger, cheaper. By the way, the production, it just wasn't there, man. It just wasn't there. So while I like Larry O, not going to be or shouldn't be part of the Pittsburgh Steelers plans in 2025. Next up is Montravius Adams. You know, you can save a little over $2 million if you cut him. It's a $3 million cap hit, but I think Montravius Adams stays with the Steelers. He's got 1 year left. He's an excellent backup. I'm not saying that he's got to be the starter as far as the nose, but he's a great backup. Yeah, absolutely. Steelers keep him around for another year. Doesn't make sense to get rid of that guy for what he brings to the table and for the amount of money. Yeah, you keep Montravius Adams around for the last year of his contract. Next up, we got Dean Lowry. Did Dean Lowry actually bring the Steelers anything? I mean, did he do anything? Now, he was hurt. I understand, but I'm sorry. Dean Lowry was a guy that probably could have went to a couple of other places around the National Football League and fought for a starting job. I don't know that that was ever in the cards here, but either way, he didn't bring what I thought was going to be necessary to the table for him to earn a roster spot in 2025. I just did not see it. I would not bring back Dean Lowry. Now, Keanu Benton, yeah, obviously he stays. The thing about Keanu Benton is I feel bad for him is because the Steelers have him playing in a position. He is not a nose tackle. He's just not. He is a 4-eye in the Steelers 3-4 defense. That is the position that I think he could thrive in. Even when we go to nickel, put him at the 3 technique. He is just not a nose tackle, and the Steelers are forcing him to play there. Again, I thought he'd take a step forward. I don't know that he took a step back. It just kind of was sideways because, again, the man is out of position. And we've seen that over and over again. Clearly, the Steelers are going to bring him back, but they got to do something to help him be productive. And playing him out of position at the nose tackle is just not it. Look, he's not 330 pounds. He just isn't. He's a smaller guy. And when I say smaller, he's 305 pounds. So, but he's not this 330, 350 pound, just plug of where 2 men can't move him. He's not. Get him in the right position, and I think Keanu Benton thrives, but he will absolutely be a Pittsburgh Steeler in 2025. Next up is DeMarvin Leal. Look, you have to keep Leal. And I know what some people are going to say, well, why? He hasn't brought us anything. He's been hurt. I agree. He was hurt, but he's on the last year of his rookie deal. You don't gain anything by letting him go. Now, if you bring him in or somebody else in that can replace him, that's fine. But I still think you keep Leal as a depth piece because, again, you're not gaining anything as far as cap space or anything by letting him go. So you might as well keep Leal. He's, like I said, he's on the last year of a rookie deal and see if he can do something. They thought very highly of him coming into the season until he got hurt. So they liked what he was giving them, but now it's time for him to put up or shut up. This will be the last year in Pittsburgh if he can't do that. Yuki Leota, and I believe that's how I pronounce his name. Look, $1 million cap savings. If we cut him, he can't be on the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2025. And then lastly, Logan Lee. Look, he was hurt all year, had a calf injury. You know how those can linger. So he didn't give the Steelers much, if anything, but he's 24. He's kind of the young guy that I'm talking about as far as a depth piece. He will be that guy. So he will be a part of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2025, but he's got to step it up. It's time. I get it that last year was a rookie year and he was hurt, but we need him to be that young depth piece that I and a lot of people keep talking about that the Steelers are trying to do on their defensive line. So he'll be a part of the rotation, but can he be a productive part of the rotation? That's the key. Now, as far as free agents are concerned, there's a lot of guys out there that the Steelers could bring in. There's older guys, there's younger guys, but what makes the most sense for Pittsburgh as far as 2025 season? For instance, Hassan Reddick is out there, but he's a little older. Khalil Mack, again, another guy that's definitely older, but he's going to be out there and available because I don't believe the Chargers are going to bring him back. So, what do the Steelers need to do, especially since I keep talking about how they need to get younger on the D line? Those guys, in my mind, just don't make a whole lot of sense. Now, here are a few guys that might make a little bit more sense, like a Javon Kinlaw, for the Jets. He's 27. He's been productive. Now, was he the guy that was productive, or was he productive because he played around Quinnen Williams, who's an outstanding all pro? You never know. But I think Kinlaw can bring something to the table for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that's somebody that's out there. He's an interior lineman. So I think it's something the Steelers would have to take a look at. Next up, Lakeith Fotu. Look, he's young or younger. He was on the IR a lot last year, but I think he's another guy the Steelers could bring in that you could put him on a prove-it deal. No, you wouldn't have to give him a long-term deal. This is somebody that would be hungry, looking for a big contract. Steelers might as well use that to their advantage. It could bring him in possibly on a one-year prove-it deal. Now, these two, Anthony Nelson and Matthew Judon, two outside linebackers. Look, Judon's older, 32 years old. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense for Pittsburgh. Although, I would say this. The Steelers did, not this past year, the previous season in 2023, brought in Marcus Golden. And he was productive at an advanced age. He came in, understood what his role was, and in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinion, played very, very well. Anthony Nelson, on the other hand, from Tampa, is another guy. Now, he's younger, 27 years old. Again, these guys are outside linebackers. Nelson might be looking for a little bit more of a contract, but I don't know about Judon. We'll see. He's 32. But again, those are two guys that you could bring in as depth pieces outside. I know what you're saying. Come on, Big B. We've got those guys already, but you need four. You need four outside rushers. You can't just do it with three. It doesn't work that way. We've seen it over the last couple of years. You gotta have four. You have Watt, you got Highsmith, you got Herbig. You need another guy just for depth, so you don't take such a huge drop off when those guys have to come out of the game. So I wouldn't be opposed to Judon in that role if he's willing to take that role. All right. So in the order of as far as guys that I would take free agency, I would do Kinlaw. I would do Reddick. I like Reddick. I know I said that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but if you could get him um, cheap on a prove it deal, especially after the fiasco that just happened with him and the Jets, that might be somebody the Steelers could again take advantage of. I would love if that were somebody that the Steelers could steal the same way with Judon. If we could steal them on a 1 year prove it deal, I would take it. Now, they might be too expensive. And I know you're going to say, come on, Big B, we can't spend all this money on defense. I get it, but we can't ignore the defense either. It's one thing to not spend all our money and all our resources there. I'm with you, but we just can't ignore it either because we saw the way that the season ended on defense. It needs help. The line needs help. This might be an area where we could make that happen. Now let's take our attention to the 2025 draft, where the Steelers might be able to make some headway and bring in some younger, productive guys. Now, obviously, we know that the big headliners as far as defensive linemen, Mason Graham, Walter Nolan and Tyleik Williams. I mean, those are the big headliners in this draft. I'm not sure the Steelers are going to be able to get those guys. I'm pretty sure they're going to be gone by the time the Steelers pick. I don't think the Steelers need to move up. I know people have said, hey, move up and take this or that. I don't think that's it because the Steelers are not one player away. If they were one player away, yeah, let's move up and let's go get a guy. But since they're not, we don't need to be giving up draft picks, not in this draft, in the way that our roster looks. Giving up draft picks to move up for one guy wouldn't be the answer here. Now, here's some guys that I think the Steelers actually have a legitimate chance on getting, at least in the first round of the draft. And I'll say the first 2 or 3 rounds of the draft. Number one would be Derek Harmon out of Oregon. His best position, literally, is 4-eye. That's exactly what the Steelers need. Now, we need a nose tackle. Don't get me wrong. But since we play a 3-4 defense, 4-eye, that's where it's at. He absolutely could come in and be a difference maker He was a difference maker at Oregon doing that. I don't see why he wouldn't be able to do the exact same thing with Pittsburgh because, again, that is his best position. Now, when we're talking about nose tackle, Kenneth Grant, I mean, 6'3, 340. Yeah, that, I mean, if he's around at 21, I know we need a wide receiver, people. I absolutely know it. But if we are able to get him at 21 and he is there, the Steelers have to do it. They've got to do it. He's a run stuffer, quick, agile, uses his hands well, fends off blockers, doesn't get moved out of the hole, which is exactly what the Steelers need. This is what they would be looking for as far as a nose tackle. If he's available, the Steelers got to go that route. And then the last one, Deion Walker out of Kentucky. Look, I get it. He's 6'6". It's not ideal for a nose tackle. Totally understand. But Ted Washington was 6'5". And Ted Washington was 6'5", 375. He played for those old Buffalo Bills teams. You couldn't move him. So 6'6", 6'5", as long as you can do the job. I understand how leverage works. So I know the low man wins, especially when you're talking about a nose tackle. But if motivated, Deion Walker is very, very good. He's ultra athletic, super strong, just strong as an ox inside, and can anchor down. But again, he is 6'6", and does he always play, with good knee bend and good hip bend? This past year, it was debatable, but the year before, it wasn't debatable. He literally couldn't be blocked. So we'll see what happens. Oh, he's not a first day pick. He's more of a second day pick. But I like Deion Walker as well. It's absolutely, like I said, 6'6", 345. I mean, come on, people. I mean, you can't have enough big, athletic defensive linemen on your roster. So if I had to pick, you know, obviously I like Grant, but I just don't think he's going to be there at 21, and he's definitely not going to be there at 53 when it's time for us to pick in the second round. Deion Walker should be. So I would have him be first on the list. Now, Harmon is kind of that in-between guy. I don't think the Steelers should take him at 21, but if he's available, which he probably will be, but he's not going to be available at 53. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, do you reach for him? I don't think that's the player that you reach for. I like him. Don't get me wrong. I like him, but I don't think you reach for him at 21, especially with other needs. You're not reaching with Grant. That's the difference. You're not reaching at 21 with him. Walker, you're not even thinking about taking at 21. But at 53, absolutely. So those are the three guys that if I'm the Steelers, that's who I hone in on, especially in rounds 1 and 2. So there you have it, people. That is what I think as far as the defensive line and what it could look like in 2025, what I believe the Steelers need to be looking at and go after. Appreciate you all being in here, man. Like I said, we're starting with the defense. We're doing the D-line, and we're going to go on down the list through the special teams, and then we're going to release the offense. So, like I said, we're doing a deep dive on each position, letting you know where we are, who needs to go, who needs to stay, give you the reasons, or at least my reasons why, and we're going from there, trying to build a 2025 scenario and roster for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We appreciate you guys. Thank you as always, and aloha.